Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 2023 Office of Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities Training and Technical Assistance Institute. Our theme this year is Pathways to Inclusion, Engaging People and Expanding Access Across the Lifespan. My name is Robin Troutman, and I am the Deputy Director of the National Association of Councils on Developmental Disabilities, NACDD. A 5-year contract was awarded to NACDD to provide training and technical assistance services to the DD councils. Each year, we develop and facilitate a training and technical assistance institute for members of the DD Council network. Usually, we can gather in person, but for the past few years, we've been hosting the institute online. Our goal remains focused on bringing you information that will help you implement the DD Council program in your state or territory. Before we begin the session, I'd like to review a few things that can help you participate. Closed captioning is available. Right now, we are using the AI automatic generated captions. Once the live captioner come on, that will change. But on the bottom of your screen, you should see a square with the letters CC and/or live transcript. Click on the up arrow to select how you want to see the captions. You can select subtitles and they will show at the bottom of your screen, or a full transcript and it will show to the right of your Zoom screen. The chat feature is available by clicking chat, and this allows you to post a message to anyone, to everyone, or to a specific person in a private chat. To post in the chat, just type your message and then hit enter. There will be a question and answer opportunity today, and we will save all questions for the end. You're welcome to post your question in the chat box or use the raised hand feature when the time comes. Please make sure you stay on mute throughout the presentation to prevent background noise and other distractions. As a reminder, all sessions that are being recorded will be posted to the IATAChelp.org website along with other materials, but we ask that you please give us a little bit of time so that way we can, make sure everything is correct and edited. And then also, we will be conducting a poll towards the end of the session to collect some data, and we appreciate your participation in that poll. Now I would like to introduce Donna Meltzer, the CEO of NACDD. As discussed, NACDD is the National Association for the 56 state and territory DD councils, and Donna provides leadership for the technical and training assistance contract and so much more. Donna?
Thanks so much, Robin. It's great to see all of you this afternoon. I know many of you were with us yesterday and for the earlier session today, but some might be joining now for the first time. So welcome to all of you. We're glad that you're here with us for this really fantastic Technical Assistance Institute. My thanks to Cheryl Matney and Cherie Moon, who have put together such a great program for all of us to partake in yesterday and today. For the upcoming session, we're going to be talking about council member engagement. And so it is my privilege to introduce our moderator for that session, Brenda Cosset from the Louisiana Council on Developmental Disabilities. And Brenda, who has been serving for quite some time on her council in various positions and on various committees, is going to introduce our presenters for the afternoon and get us started. So Brenda, welcome.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
The title of the session is Recruiting, Preparing, and Engaging Council Members. I will give you a brief introduction of each speaker. Dr. David Duell is a Senior Research Fellow and Strategic Alliance SME for the International Disability Center and Academic Dean Emeritus for the Masters Academy International, California. Dr. Dave was appointed Region Disability Integration Lead for the American Red Cross and became a member of the United Nations Disaster Risk Reduction Thematic Group in the interest of people with disabilities in disasters. He currently serves as interim chairperson for the New York State Developmental Disability Planning Council. Dr. Dave is married with 4 adult children, 1 daughter with a diagnosis of Down syndrome. Our next speaker is Darrell Powell. He joined the Alabama Council on Developmental Disabilities team in November 2019, following a long career at Lee County Youth Development Center, serving his last position as the coordinator of the Intensive Residential Service Program and a team member of the Professional Development Department. Prior to his last position, he served as executive manager of several programs. He is one who envisions excellence in the delivery of human services. Darrell Powell is also a team leader and peer reviewer for the Council on Accreditation, which is an international, independent, nonprofit human service accrediting organization. Lastly, we have Dr. Melissa Sylvester. She is the Director of Planning, Research, and Evaluation for the Alabama Council on Developmental Disabilities. Dr. Sylvester is responsible for planning, research, and evaluation activities connected to the state plan of the Council and the composition of related federal reports. She has a doctoral degree in rehabilitation and special education and a master's degree in rehabilitation counseling, both from Auburn University, and is a certified rehabilitation counselor. In her spare time, Dr. Sylvester enjoys mystery and suspense books, podcasts, and movies.
We have the first slide, please. The front slide. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Recruiting, Preparing, and Engaging Council Members. If you just came on, it's a pleasure for Melissa, Darrell, and myself to encourage you in your council leadership roles pertaining to your members. Please know that this is a work in progress for us, but we hope to improve and learn from asking the right questions and receiving your input today. And so you can even be thinking about sharing aspects of your council and what you're doing to help your board members get acclimated and become active very quickly. Well, in this final session for the week, it might be a good time to daydream a little. Today marks a historic departure coming out of COVID-19. We might consider this time as an opportunity to rethink and even restart some of our council programs and practices. We might do a little recreating of our council experience for the benefit of our members. In the last 2 days, we focused on many critical aspects of our work. Let's step back now and look at the council experience from the perspective of an individual council member. What would we hope we might find if we were to talk to individual council members and interview them today? What is their experience like from beginning to end? I was encouraged by what Commissioner Jill Jacobs said yesterday in her concluding session remarks. She said, it's all about community and relationships. We can and we should rightly ask, how do community and relationships apply to our council members in their council roles? So to probe that, may I ask several more clarifying questions? I'm going to ask you to think now about your council. First, who are your council members? Core groupings within our councils include council director and staff, caucus members, agency representatives, and at appropriate times, also guests. But they must be one council to achieve consensus through decision-making. Do they have the relationships? Do they feel like part of the community? Another question that we should ask ourselves is, what are our council members' expectations? How would they like to contribute? Those 4 groups that we just listed are quite diverse. How intentional can we be with such a complex grouping of members. Of course, we must, but it will require thought and planning followed by action. This causes us to ask, what is a council like? I have two pictures or two images of councils. In some ways, the council is like an orchestra in which the percussion, strings, brass, and woodwinds must come together to produce a symphony, and that word means one sound. It should be a unified and cohesive sound, and yes, it should be pleasant to the ears. But another image of our councils, and I actually prefer this one myself, is that they are like universities. Students come in fresh out of high school with little cultural experience. They're scared. They feel grossly inadequate. They are sure that they will fail. I dare say that's what our new council members feel like coming in. It's a very daunting and frightening experience for many of them. Maybe they've had some experience on boards and councils before, but many of them have not. And so it's all new and it's all very confusing. So a third question is, in what ways would new council members like to grow during their council experience? I think that's a question we often don't ask. Again, each one of these groups that we listed, the 4 groups, will have different goals for participation and growth. So if you're a council chair, what does it mean for you? What does it mean for your council members? Having asked some of these difficult questions, let's first do a brief overview of our session. Then we'll get into the details. Second slide, please. Yeah. Our target perspective will be what we'd like to call council member care. And we will think about member care as a process, not as an event, not as a single action, but a process that begins with recruitment, continues on with onboarding, and then training and engaging. And finally, the one that we might be inclined to neglect the most, I think, I'll call terming out in search for another placement. Next slide, please. I'm sorry, would you stay on that slide? My apologies. So just a brief overview of what we'll be talking about. We'll do a description, which we just did. We'll talk about the framework. A council member care cycle is actually a process, a linear process. Recruitment, and Daryl and Melissa will talk about the compliance timeline. Preparation, which includes training, mentoring, engagement. The council meetings themselves, a primary occasion for engagement. And then we'll talk about exit and placement, exit strategies. Next slide, please. A council chair is many things. She or he is a state official and policymaker. A director once told me that in part, our councils are policy boards. We identify needs and prescribe changes to meet those needs through awareness and advocacy. We establish standards, develop policies, and follow through with best practices. These are the things we do as council members. But what should serving on the council mean for a council member? May we suggest, next slide, please. In council member care, as we take individuals through a basic or detailed growth process, there are several processes or several phases involved. First of all, it begins with recruitment of who you invite and how you invite them. And my colleagues from the Alabama office are going to talk about this in much greater detail, but this is a critical process. Who do you reach out to? Who do you invite? And how do you go about doing that? It deepens with preparation through orientation and training, whatever form you happen to use. And I'm sure if we were to ask every single representative in the room from the different councils, we would all do this in a slightly different way. But then, as we've already mentioned, it ends with new placement beyond your council. That's a process. But even more than that, our councils are where we can create spaces and amplify voices for our council members. And this, I think, is very important. It shifts our focus away from our projects momentarily, and our projects are extremely important, but it focuses on the development of the individual council member. How do we create space for them? And how do we amplify their voice? Because that's probably one of the reasons why they joined the council to begin with. Sure, we as council chairs can do our work, achieve our goals, and contribute to the greater good, but we see our efforts multiply exponentially when we take the time we could spend on other achievements and invest that effort in the lives of other council members so they can develop their gifts, find their space, and amplify their voice, and then the voices of others. And this is a self-replicating process. We're always talking about how we can increase the number of advocates that are engaged with our council. Well, this is a self-replicating process that keeps on going. If we will teach our council members to create spaces and amplify voices and do that by modeling it in our activity in their lives, they'll do the same and we'll multiply advocates that way. This way they can accomplish this part of their life's mission. As council chairs, their mission can, maybe should, become our missions. Let's talk about creating spaces and amplifying voices. What does that mean? What's involved? Creating spaces, first of all. What does it mean? Social space is sacred ground. It is where you live your best life. You work hard and smart because you want to, because it is fun, because you discover on your own that you would rather be there doing your work than pursuing a hobby or a recreation, perhaps even. Once you've been there, you'll never want to go back to the paltry workaday world. You will be fully alive. Yes, it's a dream. We said we were going to dream. And it's one that we all have, I think. But some of us attain this dream. And here in council space, they can live their best life, and we can help them do that. That's creating spaces. What about amplifying voices? Well, what is your voice? It is how you matter. It is your gift and your purpose all wrapped up into one. Your voice is not just the words that you utter. It is the reason you get out of bed in the morning. And yes, it is what you say when you step up to the microphone as the council chair or in some other council role, and sound comes out of your mouth. But ideally, it is only because it is your mission. It is your calling. Some would say your vocation. For some, it becomes your reason for living. And you're probably saying, well, that's really serious stuff. Many of our council members have immeasurable expectations for what they will experience when they come in and they join our councils. It's their dream come true. They've worked so hard to be there, to go through the process. And there are their expectations before us. How do we meet those expectations, or at least try? Just like creating spaces, amplifying the voices of others is about them. It is about our council members and giving them their best council experience. But what must a council office do to recruit, prepare, and engage individuals who want to serve on our councils? I'm going to turn our attention now to my colleague, Melissa, and Melissa will talk a little bit about what they're doing in the Alabama office. Melissa?
Thanks, Dave. Next slide. Hello, everyone. I hope you all are enjoying the TA Institute so far. We are going to talk about council member recruitment in terms of our continuing journey towards membership compliance. Before we get started, I want to thank IATAC for extending the invitation to share our work today. Next slide. Before 2022, the council had not really conducted a massive statewide membership recruitment campaign. However, like many other councils, in late February of 2022, we received feedback from ACL on our 5-year state plan. There were no DDAC compliance issues in any areas of the state plan other than in council membership. With respect to our council membership, ACL noted that there were vacancies, that all terms were expired, and that our membership did not include a person with a developmental disability who lives or has lived in an institution or an immediate relative or legal guardian of an individual with a developmental disability who lives or has lived in an institution. Once we read that feedback from ACL, we knew we had to do something. As recommended by IATAC, we developed a detailed timeline that explained our recruiting plans. Overall, that timeline included explaining how we would prepare for the recruitment campaign, execute the campaign, review the results of the campaign, connect with the governor's office, and transition council members. That compliance timeline generally aligned with the council's quarterly meeting schedule, and it basically described how the council would come into compliance by FY24. We began preparation for recruitment activities in March of 2022 and were able to submit recommendations to the governor's office in March of 2023. We had anticipated that appointments would be finalized by the governor's office in May of 2023, which is this month. However, we have not heard anything official yet. The governor's office told Daryl, our executive director, in mid-April or so that they were working on those appointments. Next slide. So March of 2022 through April of 2022, we classify as our recruitment preparation stage. During this time period, we reviewed council member appointment dates and expiration dates to see if anyone was still eligible to remain on the council. We reviewed and updated the council membership application. For example, we updated the membership application to adequately capture information pertaining to demographics. We added the federal definition of developmental disability. We modified questions about appointment history. We clarified the membership categories and provided examples as necessary. And we added a question about needed accommodations. We also developed recruitment materials. We developed a membership FAQ as suggested by IATAC that includes questions and the corresponding answers, such as, do council members receive support with traveling to attend council meetings? How do I apply to be a council member? And what are the expectations for council members? We developed a flyer as well, which is on the screen, front and back. And by the way, all of our recruitment materials are on our website. The flyer includes the words, "We need your voice," a brief note about our values and the supports available to council members, and our contact information. Moreover, our materials were in different formats and languages. For example, there was a print and electronic version of the application, as well as an English and Spanish version. The online application could be translated into more than English and Spanish if needed, but Spanish was our focus, given that it is the second most spoken language in Alabama. Next slide. So May of 2022 through September of 2022, we classify as our recruitment, implementation, or execution stage. During this time period, we notified the full council of the membership compliance issues at the May quarterly meeting. We had already discussed the issues and recruiting plans with the executive committee prior to going before the full council. The IATAC director educated council members on membership requirements, including rotation requirements, at that same May meeting. Recruiting did start in May. We did a press release. That press release was sent out by the Alabama Press Association to all of their newspapers and magazines in the state. We launched a digital campaign. On the screen, you see a couple of our social media and digital advertisements. One includes the words, "Speak out as an advocate," and the other includes the words, "Make your voice heard." We conducted a mass mail out. We discussed membership during the meetings of committees, boards, and work groups that the council is involved in. We distributed the announcement of our campaign via our email list and repeated the announcement in our monthly newsletter during this time period. We connected with as many disability-related partners and organizations as possible, such as the Centers for Independent Living, the ARC of Alabama, Special Olympics of Alabama, the networks of current and former grantees, recent graduates of Partners in Policymaking, graduates of the Alabama Governor's Youth Leadership Forum, etc. We connected with agencies that may provide services to people with disabilities, such as health departments in each county, and even connected with some of our aging partners. We connected with the Alabama Nursing Home Association. We also placed a full-page ad in disability-related magazines and magazines that reach rural areas. For example, the Alpha magazine, the River Region Parents magazine, and the Alabama Living magazine. In terms of magazine distribution, for example, the Alpha magazine reaches about 63,000 households in Alabama. The River Region Parents magazine reaches about 10,000 households, and the Alabama Living magazine reaches about 432,000 households. We also conducted television interviews on channels in 3 of the 5 major markets in Alabama, and that is the Dothan market, the Montgomery market, and the Birmingham market. The Dothan market reaches about 100,000 viewers. The Montgomery market reaches about 220,000 viewers, and the Birmingham market reaches about 730,000 viewers. Lastly, we distributed recruitment materials at vaccine clinics, and most of those clinics were in rural areas. And just FYI, once an individual completed an application, that applicant received a confirmation email and/or letter confirming receipt of the application. The recruitment campaign ended officially at the end of September of 2022. We had a few applications come in the 1st of October, which we accepted. Next slide. So on the screen, you see our updated membership application in print and PDF format. It includes a note about if you need help completing the application, the federal definition of DD, a contact information section, a demographic section, questions about why you want to be on the council, and again, a note about application confirmation. Next slide. On the screen is our membership FAQ. It includes questions and answers such as, what does the council do? How long do council members serve on the council? And are council meetings open to the public? And again, all of this is on our website for closer viewing. Next slide. On the screen are just more examples of our recruitment materials. On the left is the magazine advertisement that was a full-page ad. It includes the words, "Now is the time to speak up," a brief note about our values, and the 9 federal areas of emphasis and our contact information. And on the right is our website announcement, and it basically describes the composition of the council in general. Next slide. So I want to point out that we did employ certain strategies to ensure we had a diverse membership application pool. We ensured that our recruitment materials were available in English and Spanish. On the screen is the Spanish version of our application in print and PDF format. We also ensured that we had diverse representation in the images that we used across our materials. We connected with grantees that support unserved or underserved populations with IDD, such as our grantee who supports Hispanic families with IDD, and our grantee who has an inclusive higher education program at a historically Black college and university. We individually contacted a variety of disability-related entities across the state that support those with autism, head and or spinal cord injury, assistive technology devices, cerebral palsy, etc. Additionally, as I stated before, our magazine advertisements in the Alpha magazine and the Alabama Living magazine were designed to touch those residing in rural areas, as both magazines support rural Alabamians. In fact, the Alabama Living magazine is the official statewide publication of the electric cooperatives in Alabama. We do believe that those strategies worked fairly well, as we had applications from racial and ethnic minorities, rural areas from across the state, etc. In fact, at that point in the timeline, we had 69 applications, which we had received in a span of 5 months, compared to about 10 applications or so that had been received in the last few years. Next slide. So October of 2022 through December of 2022, we classify as our summary and review stage, part 1. During this time period, a council member application summary chart was developed for the membership committee that included applicant name, county and region, gender and race, representation selected on the application, council appointment history, and related experience to help the committee more easily review the applications. Applicants were organized first by category. So a person with IDD, family member, or required member who is subject to term limits, and then organized by region. A membership worksheet and a map of the regions in Alabama were included in reviewer packets. A review of the demographics of all applicants was at the end of the summary chart document. So to recap, the applications, the summary chart, a worksheet, and a map of the counties and regions in the state were mailed to the membership committee in October. Applications were then reviewed individually by the reviewing committee for the rest of the time period. We had planned to have membership recommendations formalized by the end of the quarterly meeting in November, or at least by the end of the quarter, but we had not anticipated receiving as many applications as we did. As I stated earlier, at that point, we had received 69 applications and thus wanted to ensure that the committee had adequate time to review the applications. So the review as a committee together did not begin until January of 2023. That deviation in the timeline was fine because we had built additional time into the timeline for unexpected situations. And just FYI, by the end of the review, which concluded in the next quarter in February of 2023, we had received an additional 6 applications, which were brought to the committee, bringing the total to 75 applicants. Since then, in March, in fact, we have received 4 more applications, bringing the total number of applications received between May of 2022 through March of 2023 to 79. Again, we have never received that many applications before. And on the screen are just some more social media and digital advertisements. One includes the words "Be a Force for the Future," and the others inform you that you can apply to be a member on our website. Next slide. So January of 2023 through March of 2023, we classify as our review stage part 2. During this time period, the membership committee had 3 meetings or 3 rounds of review using the tools developed by IATAC and that were modified for our council, and those meetings were fairly straightforward. Membership recommendations were formalized by the end of the February of 2023 quarterly meeting. Before the notice of recommendations was brought to the full council in the form of generalized information about the membership slate, recommended appointees were notified that they were likely being recommended for council membership, asked if they were still interested in serving on the council, and invited to the February council meeting, and most of them attended. Membership recommendations were forwarded to the Alabama Governor's Office on March 9th of 2023. The executive director has been in regular communications with the governor's appointments office pretty much throughout the process as needed. And on the screen is an example of our email marketing, and it describes what the council does in general. Next slide.
Melissa, can you slow down just a little bit?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
So how did you learn about the ACDD? This was the last question on the application. This question gives us an indication of whether our recruitment efforts worked. It appears that we received at least one application from each of the strategies that we use. Most applications stem from referrals from friends, relatives, professionals, etc. We had some from our ACDD email list or our website, a few from the governor's office, a handful from social media or television, another handful from mail, newspaper, or magazine advertisements, and a couple from our council supported projects or conferences. Next slide. So April of 2023 through June of 2023, we classify as our transition and wrap up stage. So we're now in the present. During this time period, we had anticipated that new council members would receive appointment letters from the governor. We had anticipated that individuals who are not appointed to the council would receive notification via email or letter. We had anticipated that new council member orientation would be held at the May meeting, and we had anticipated that the transition would be completed by the end of the quarter. But that is likely not going to happen at this point. Our council meeting is actually next week, and we have not heard anything official from the governor's office, as I stated earlier. So our transition and wrap-up stage will now likely happen during the time period of July of 2023 through September of 2023. This is our additional 3-month window that was built into the timeline that supports adjustments to the timeline in case of extenuating circumstances such as natural disasters or unexpected delays at the governor's office. And it allows the council to still be in compliance before October 1. So at this point, I'll turn it over to Executive Director Darryl Powell to speak briefly about council member preparation and engagement.
All right, thank you, Melissa. Special thanks to NACDD. And I know IATAC is a part of NACDD, but I want to say IATAC as well as ACL. A special thank you and the opportunity for us to share about what we're doing here in Alabama. And a lot of what we have done is very similar to some, many other councils. So we just have a unique way of doing things. So we're excited to, share a little bit more. So next slide, please. To add to what has been said, we do everything that we could possibly do to prepare and engage our members. The image on the slide is an updated handbook cover, which means we've updated our handbook and our orientation for our members. When updating our handbook, we really wanted our cover to jump out or just pop, really to engage or bring attention to our council members. So that way it will, bring their attention, come to the light of their attention. The cover page indicates who we are. It thanks our members for their voice, as well as invite them to our team. It also highlights our mission as well as our vision, and provide a contact information of our council to all of our potential council members. Our handbook also includes things like our executive orders, our bylaws, our DD Act, conflict of interest, MOUs, as well as other relevant orientation information for our council. And our council handbook, orientation handbook, also mimics our orientation PowerPoint that we will share with all of our council members. Next slide, please. Like other councils, we have had members serving for extended amounts of time, so we have to be creative when it comes to engaging members who appear to know it all. As you can see on the slide, we provide agendas to all of our members a week or at least a week or 2 weeks before our meeting. Prior to completing the agendas, we communicate with our members, primarily our chairs and our vice chairs, to see if they have anything to add or delete from our agenda, which is a way of engaging each of them in the agenda process. As you may be able to see on the slide, we include all of our voting members as well as our presenters on our agenda. We ask all of our agencies to submit the agency written reports prior to our council meeting, so we don't spend at least a large amount of time on the reports. However, we do not always receive them beforehand, but it is our goal to do so. A way to engage, we provide opportunities for grantee or sub-grantees to provide updates in our council meetings. This is a time when our council have an opportunity to hear from all of our presenting grantees, as well as ask questions. We aim to have state representatives, national presenters, as well as state presenters on various topics in our council meetings. We also invite various community members, which includes local and state representatives. In fact, we've had state representatives as well as federal representatives attend and engage in our meetings. So with that being said, this has been an update for how we in Alabama engage all of our council members. So now I think I will pass the torch. Well, I think we have one more slide. I'm sorry. One more slide. Yes, we do have a contact information where we're located, as well as contact information on this slide. So we have really been busy in the state of Alabama to come in compliance, which I'm very pleased with where we are. And all of the councils that have provided some insight on the way they do things in their state. So that is a little bit about how we do things in the state of Alabama. So I will now pass the torch back to our good friend Dave. So Dave, you have the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Daryl. Thank you, Melissa. Just tying some things together now. We've talked about a number of different aspects of recruiting, engaging, preparing. We've even introduced the idea of what happens when you term out, when a council member turns out. Like to recommend 2 core components for acclimating new council members, and probably many of you are already doing these things, but let's just reflect for a moment. First of all, member orientation. Melissa and Daryl suggested a guide. A manual or a guide can focus on onboarding content. It's what members need to know at the outset of their council journey. And it's really nice if a council member has just been approved recently, it's nice to send them the manual or the guide, whatever you choose to call it, so that if they receive the manual or the guide as soon as we approve them, they'll be highly motivated to read it. Probably they'll never have more time to read it after that point, but they're very excited about getting involved in the council and they want to understand it. And so it's a great opportunity for them to just focus on the guide. In order to help them with the guide or the manual, I recommend mentor partnering. It's a 1-year commitment with a seasoned council member. So someone who's been on the council 2 or 3 years, ideally. And it's focused on the manual or the guide. Usually when we talk about mentoring, and we've talked a lot about mentoring today in our 2 sessions, but usually we're talking about what's called whole life mentoring or job coaching. That's not what I'm recommending here. What I'm recommending here focuses on the manual itself. So the new council member is introduced to the council with the guidance of the mentor partner using the member guide or the member manual as a tool. So a mentor introduced as soon as approved can accomplish much in preparing the individual for their first council meeting. And so highly recommend this. We should not expect that everyone wants a mentor, as in the whole life or job coach type mentor, but everyone would welcome having at their access someone who is familiar with the manual or the guide and who will help them understand the details of the manual or the guide. Next slide, please, Cheryl. So, goals of member training. Now we're talking about content, and these are only suggestions, but they're reasonable, I think, suggestions about what a new council member needs to know. First of all, they need to be familiar with the national framework. We throw acronyms around like ACL, NACD, IATACC, and HHS. These are familiar acronyms that we use. But to a new council member just coming in, they're like a second language. And as federal agencies, how do they relate to one another? We did a session like this, and at the end of one of the sessions, one of the agency people came up to me and said, you know, I never understood that. And to see the big picture and to see it more clearly has helped me immeasurably. Council members will probably not be able to explain all the connections. We don't expect that of them. And I don't suggest a quiz or an exam. That tends to discourage the council member, I think, but give them the opportunity to learn and ask questions. They should understand the basic critical agency relationships well enough to explain how their state council fits into the national framework. The second form of content that I would recommend are state systems networks. Council members need to get acquainted with partnering state agencies to work with and through them. Caucus council members will serve alongside state agency leaders. It's essential that they have a basic understanding of how their state council connects to these agencies. You know, what are these representatives actually doing there, and how do they understand them? Think about questions that your state agency leaders, and I recognize a number of you are state agency leaders, but for those of you who are not, think about questions that your state agency leaders ask during council meetings. Usually the questions reflect the interest of that agency that the individual represents on your council. So understanding your state system of agencies really is critical. No one will do it perfectly, but we need to have a working knowledge, especially your DSA. The third category of content that I highly recommend, and this is where the rubber meets the road and we get traction, and that's individual engagement. This is really the critical goal. A new council member onboards and engages council work. But what if they don't have a clear understanding about why they are there and what is expected of them? And on that point, let's consider how best to help them. Next slide, please, Cheryl. Recommend considering three broad categories, and these are extremely broad brushstroke suggestions. But first of all, build a council team that works together. That's going to be so essential to getting work done in the council. So see your council as a team or a community and work on bringing them together and making them cohesive. Let them exercise their gifts. Each new council member coming in has background, experiences, training that's extremely useful to the council. But we must let them exercise their gifts and use their knowledge. And so that will take concentration on our part, how to do that. I've also found that the mentor partner can help kind of understand what some of these gifts are, even before the individual new council member starts at the first meeting. And thirdly, I think this is probably the most important. Create a council culture that sustains them. Again, to use Commissioner Jacobs' term, create a community. A culture is the systems of engagement. A community is the people. And on the matter of culture building, our councils would function best if they mimicked our core values and culture. Let me just point out 3 of these. First, they should be person-centered for the council member. A care plan or IEP for each council member would be a helpful tool. If you don't write it down, at least keep it in your head what the goals and the interests of each of your council members are, and that means knowing them individually and getting to know them personally. Maybe have them write their own plan out for you. Most council members would want their chairperson or the leaders of the council or the council in general to understand what their interests are and why they're there. So have them write out their own plan. But second, they should be home and community-based in all perspectives and actions, such as planning, project designing, and internal program developing. We should think community-based in every way and home-based. Third, they should be diverse, equitable, and fully inclusive, free of implicit bias. As a council chair, you'll find that you're very concerned about member participation and retention. That's one of the things that goes through a council chair's mind. Well, participation starts with on-ramping them to the council so that they get involved and do the work of a council member right away. Don't let a lot of time pass. If you help them get involved, especially those that might stand by and watch, you'll also resolve the second concern, and that's retention. Retention is how you keep them involved so that they don't drift into inactivity and start skipping meetings until they finish their council term. How do you accomplish both participation and retention? It's the same solution. Create spaces for them and amplify their voices, as we said earlier. You find a suitable place for each member who hasn't already found one, and you plug them in. After all, they wanted to join your council. That is why they went through the long and detailed process of getting your governor's approval. They came in highly motivated, but you must keep them motivated by ensuring they can participate in meaningful ways and make satisfying contributions. That's so important. They need to believe that they are contributing to the council work. Next slide, Cheryl. Finally, exit and placement. When a council member terms out, connect with your governor's appointment office or other potential member feeder systems that your council connects with and is already a part of. Individuals who come through your council, if recruited, prepared, and engaged in member care, can be ideal candidates for other agencies. I would urge you to develop a strategy so that this actually happens, so that when someone leaves your council, when they term out, there's actually a place for them to be involved. Let's talk about terming out. As members leave our councils, we might ask several more clarifying questions that members probably ask themselves and each other. And this could get a little bit uncomfortable. They might ask themselves or others, was it a good experience? Did I enjoy it? Did it help me? They also might ask, did I feel welcome from the first email? Or did I come and go as a stranger? Third, did my council give me opportunities to grow? Was I able to make a meaningful contribution? Fourth, did I gain in confidence as well as competence? I think we do a good job of improving competence as our council members get involved and as they take part over the long haul. But what is their confidence level? Confidence is so important. And yes, members lack confidence and it impedes their council performance. Next question. As I term out, do I have new opportunities for other service available to me? Is my council helping me explore options based on my gifts, preferences, and service compatibility? And lastly, will I recommend the council experience to others in the future? We want them to be able to say a hearty yes. I had a great council experience. I went in, I became acclimated, people helped me, I grew. And when it was time for me to end my council experience, they helped me find greater engagement beyond the council. Finally, we can just cast off all this to the wind and say to the incoming council members, we would never say this aloud, by the way, it's up to you to make your personal council experience a success. Or we might say, it's what you make of it. Or we might say, we give you the tools, you can build it yourself. Or we might say, you can do it. Kind of an attaboy type of thing. With all the other council work to do, it's very easy to be hands-off with council member care, as we're calling it. But respectfully, I believe we reap the consequences of the hands-off perspective. In short, we'll get back in council performance what we invest in our new council members. Thank you for your attention. I'll turn the session back over to, I believe it's Donna, for a time of questions and answers. But right now I want to thank my colleagues, my esteemed colleagues, Melissa and Daryl.
Actually, I think it's me. So right? Is that right? So it's hi again. This is Robin. So I will
Sorry,
be
Rob.
happy. No, that's okay. I'd be happy to facilitate the Q&A. So if you have a question, please either use the raise your hand function, come off mute, or type it in the chat. I'll just go ahead and let you know a couple of the comments if you didn't see them. Wow, I really appreciate how step-by-step and straightforward this presentation is. Thank you so much for your transparency. Let's see, Melissa and Alabama friends, what a great recruitment process. This is great. You are not alone in having very slow appointments. So you're not alone.
I'd like to ask a question of the audience. Would some of you mind sharing what you do to bring in council members who are new to the experience and get them acclimated? I think you probably have a wealth of information to share. But if not,
so since it's quiet, I will just, and I know John Taylor's got his hand up. I just want to offer a couple of nuggets here. So Dave, in his role as interim chair for the New York State DD Council, put together a lunch and learn series. And so over the course, I think it was 4 meetings. So every week for the month of January or something like that, he did a lunch and learn. And so it was just 1 hour. Council members, of course, were the primary focused audience of it, but it wasn't closed. Other people could come and listen. And he really did take it from the national education, where do we fit in nationally, to how do we work in the state, to how do we do this individually at a local, in the local council, how do you want to be involved? So And Dave, I do believe you guys archived those lunch and learn recordings on your website, if I'm not mistaken.
That's correct.
And so you guys could always Google New York State DD Council, check it out, and see what's over there. Robin, I think we've got a couple of hands.
Yeah, John's hand was raised, and then I guess I don't know. Did you retract, John, or?
Sorry, I just clicking buttons on the screen. You know, for recruitment, when I came in, I found out where exactly in the basement of the Capitol boards and commission was sequestered and built a relationship with them. So as they had applications, I went through and was able to vet some of them and just made the promise of I'll find out if they'll do the work and I'll make sure that they won't embarrass the administration. And that to them, it made them feel like I was an ally. So that was part of it. I also just worked with self-advocates, and anybody that showed up to our events talked about, hey, we have openings in the council. Are you interested? And just start building the relationship that way. And I was able to push appointments through faster that way as well. You know, once they saw that, yep, this was good. And I realized that our governor trusted our boards and commissions person and she could trust me. That made appointments go through really quickly. And then anybody that came on board, I always made sure they had lunch with the chair so the chair could talk about what the work really looked like, not just from staff. And then when we had legislative session, I invited anybody that wanted to come down to learn some advocacy skills, just to spend the day with us at the Capitol, meet legislators and make the process less scary. Because I've really felt like a challenge for our council has been getting members to advocate a bit more forcefully to our legislature, and that worked well. So that's what worked for us.
Thank you, John.
Thank you, John. Vicky in New York.
Hi. Well, first I want to say great job, everyone. I want to point out that Dave, even though he's listed as interim chair, he hopefully soon will be full chair. We're just waiting for the approval by the governor's office. But as you, I'm sure all can tell, he's been such a great leader and such a great addition to our council. So I just wanted to say I didn't have much to offer as far as our process. I'm so impressed with Alabama and what all that you've all done, and we're going to absolutely go to the website after this presentation and get a lot of those forms that you've been using. I think that we've done a really good job, particularly with the recruitment of diverse members, thanks mainly to, really primarily to Jackie Hayes, who is our DEI program specialist and has done a great job getting more diverse members on our council. The one thing that struck me, though, is we do not have a council member committee. We do not have a committee, as Dave knows, in New York State that vets council members. And I'm just wondering how many councils do. I think it's a great best practice. And just wondering if that is something that's fairly, routine or common with other councils.
And let me just weigh in here. So just you guys know, the DD Act allows councils to recommend members to the governor, right? So the DD Act, it says the council may provide recommendations. So you can do that. Now it comes down to, and usually it's, what does your state appointments office process entail? So in some councils, you must use the official state boards and commissions website application. Kristen Larson, you're nodding. So the council can't go out and just develop their own thing and then shoot applications across. Kristen Harvey had a very different experience where it really was I believe the state boards and commissions had their own application, but it did not adequately address all of the membership requirements of the DD Act. So Kristen had to work with their boards and commissions office, and they came to a beautiful compromise, I think. And I hope it's working. But, and I'm not sure if you roll a membership committee into your process, Kristen. I don't think so, because boards and commissions really rules that. But like Lisa Tesler in Pennsylvania, or McKinley, you're on, you actually oversee, I think, that whole thing. if I'm not mistaken, but you guys have a very robust membership committee process in Pennsylvania. So it's a little bit all over the place.
Yeah, I definitely want to pursue that in New York because I think we do have that ability to do that. And just, when I took over as acting executive director, we were so out of compliance at that point. It was right during the pandemic. I'm sure, Cheryl, you might remember, but we had lost all of our leadership positions on our council. We had lost many of our caucus members. We were at 40%, I think, at that point. So over the last few years, we have just focused, and we are at that point now. We just have one more. We have the institutional member that is actually under consideration by the governor's office, but we have made great strides. But we have, as I'm listening today and hearing from other councils, we definitely have some room for improvement. So I'm really happy with today's session, and I'm learning a lot. So thank you.
Kristen?
Thank you. Well done, Alabama. Just wanted to say that. Well done, Alabama. And to clarify a little bit about what Cheryl was saying about Delaware, the compromise that we came to with our governor's office was a short questionnaire that they agreed to attach to our application to be sure that the people who were applying fully understood what a developmental disability is and what each of the designations mean. And that really helped us to have kind of call our applicants to be sure that they were the appropriate people who should be applying. As far as recruitment, council has taken the tack of participating in a lot of community events and really doing a lot of social media outreach. We recently got 6 brand new members from all across the tiny little state of Delaware, and they're wonderful. They are so involved and they hit the ground running. But something I really need to do, and Daryl, I'll probably be bugging you. Yeah, I need help with the orientation. Right now, I do a one-on-one orientation with new members. That's pretty intense. It's like 2-3 hours. They can ask me anything they want. But I really need to reorient our entire council. So that's something I could use help with. So thank you so much. And again, well done, Alabama.
Thanks, Kristen. Cheryl, were you gonna?
Oh, I was just gonna, Vicky, that a lot of councils wrote in about who's got a membership committee in
Yes,
the
I
chat
saw that.
box. Okay, good.
And I just want to say to Kristen, we have a nice orientation manual. If you would like, I can certainly share that with you. That's one thing that we've developed over the last couple of years. I'm happy to share that. Although we wouldn't want to update it after today's presentation, but yeah, so I can share that with you after this.
No, I would love that. Ours is very antiquated, and we definitely want to bring more information into that about ways that council members can be involved in community outreach and some outside of the box things. So yes, please, any ED who's on here, please send me your orientation materials. Thanks.
Just a note in case anybody didn't see with how fast the chat box moves, but Jackie Hayes in New York did post a link to one of the New York DDPC Lunch and Learns. The YouTube link is there. So we can make sure, I'm going to copy and retype it so it's towards the bottom. And then let's see. I thought I saw a question real quick.
I think McKinley,
yeah, McKinley, I was holding because I know McKinley put in quite the piece about their recruitment, but I just wanted to see. But yes, McKinley, please enlighten with your multi-step that you posted in the chat.
Yeah, no, what I was going to say is, like, I know, like with our application, we actually have the criteria of what is a development disability that's on there. And basically what we do is, like, our process is pretty long. It's like, we have our application, we have everything on the website and everything. It's, when people send the applications in, we screen the applications. Sometimes we need to call contact the folks to, to get clarifications on what they put down on the applications. And then what I do is we bring everything to the nomination committee, and they and based on the nomination committee, they take a look at the different applicants, they see who they like, and then we contact them and we invite them in for an interview. If they do well in the interview, we then invite them as guests to our council meetings. And then when they come into council meetings, that's kind of a part of the screening process. You know, the council members, committee members get to meet them, get to know them. If they like them, then we eventually we ask them to be committee members, which a committee member is basically a step down from a council member. They can do a lot of things that council members can do, but they can't vote. Well, they can vote, but they can't. Well, they can vote on certain things, but they can't, like, so it's complicated. But anyway, they're not quite a council member. They like the final votes have to be council members, right? But anyway, so we then invite them to be committee members, and if they do well as committee members, eventually they can be, the nomination committee will recommend them to the governor, and that's if the governor appoint them. So it can be 2 years before a person becomes a council member, but there's kind of a very long screening process that we have, and we have people kind of in the pipeline. And as people are leaving the council, like as they're on the council for, like their terms are ending and things like that, we try to move people in, kind of like it's kind of like a pipeline in a sense. We kind of try to move people in as they go out. And, and we recruit, in part based upon demographics and other things, as we look at what the federal requirements are. So we look at things like, as we're trying to recruit, we're looking at, okay, what's the percentage of people in Pennsylvania that live in rural areas? What are the demographics as far as race and ethnicity and everything? So we discuss all of that during our nomination committee meetings, and we just, and so we, again, and with self-advocates, with family members, all of that is discussed, as we are, in our nomination committee meetings, as we're trying to recruit people and everything. So that's how we do it. So it's actually a pretty rigorous, in my opinion, pretty rigorous process. So I hope that helps.
Thank you, McKinley. Hey, Cheryl, in the chat, there was a question about collecting all these resources and maybe putting them on the IATAC site. We can definitely look into something. I don't want to say yes for sure, but there was a request.
That's not as easy as it sounds. All of our
could,
materials on the IATAC website need to be vetted and approved by the administration. So,
what we could do, and that's why I didn't answer, but what we could do is similar to what NACDD has done in the past when we're not quite sure what can go on the site versus not, is we've created a SharePoint folder that is open to all of you that you can drop things in and then be able to share that way. So that might be the right place for the interim, if that's a thing. And then thank you, Kristen. The global orientation materials on the IATAC Help website, she says, is very helpful. Any other questions? We did put the poll up to gather some demographics and other information. So thank you. To please fill that out. We only got 69% participated, guys. Any other questions? Let's see. So I'm just reading this chat from Texas. You have 27 members, and you've revised your orientation into an interactive session with 5 modules. Number 1 is, what does it mean to be a public board member? Number 2 is, who are we? Number 3 is, why are we here? I ask that question every day. Number 4 is, what do we do? That one too. And 5, how do we do it? And we've worked all the pieces needed into those modules. Members find it simple to follow and seem to enjoy. Corin, do you want to share anything else? I'm calling you out because everyone is asking for.
Sure, thank you. Yes, when we got a group of new appointees in 2019, we had looked at, previously we had a huge binder of material that, of course had the DD Act and all the things that were needed. And it was just so overwhelming to members, and we still provide that information to them, but we don't try to cram it all into the initial orientation session. And so we came up with 5 modules. We talked about who makes up the council, who they're going to interact with, what their meetings are going to look like, what their responsibility is in developing the state plan, what their responsibility is in monitoring our budget. And we just kind of touched on those pieces in the initial orientation. And we even have, like, at the end of each module, there's a little quiz. And, you know, how many DD councils are there? Can you name the 6 territories? You know, it's that kind of fun interactive piece that keeps them engaged, so they're not sleeping through all of the first, you know, 3 hours of their appointment to the council. And we've found that, I think it's been pretty good, and it even worked when we had to move into doing everything virtually. And you know, and then as they need more detailed pieces as their tenure progresses, then we, of course, you know, we always have it for them as reference. But then when somebody says, oh yeah, let me see more detail on, you know, what are our audit procedures, then we can, you know, bring that back up and follow member development, like as the year goes on. In May, we talk a lot about member development. In August, of course, as we are looking at, do we have any amendments to our state plan? You know, it's those kinds of, so they get it on a continual basis. It's not just that one time initial orientation.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Corin.
Yep.
I don't see any additional questions, and we're a little bit over time. So with that, I say thank you to David, Melissa, and Daryl. We appreciate your time and all of the information you provided. I'm sure people will be in your inboxes by tomorrow, if not within the next couple hours, because it is across the country. So you'll get some West Coasters in your inbox right away. But thank you. We're so thrilled that you all joined us today, and we will see you next week for day 3. Have a great day, everyone.